I've had the privilege and the pleasure of working with our guest today. And that means I've had an insider's view of her dynamic, committed leadership. She is a global ambassador for the UN-backed Race to Zero and Race to Resilience campaigns, championing global climate action and sustainability. She is the CEO of the Caribbean Climate-Smart Accelerator, leading the charge for climate smart solutions in the Caribbean. She's a versatile leader who currently serves as a global Web3 board member for Salesforce.com and a trustee for the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee. She has also served as head of Microsoft Trinidad and Tobago, president of Invest TT, and regional vice president of Fujitsu. Racquel Moses, you are a visionary catalyst for global transformation, and I am delighted to have you join us on the Island Woman podcast. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Diane. And I want to reiterate your that we have worked together, and Diane is phenomenal in every way there is. Whenever we talk about the gold standard of developing materials, having a vision, doing a marketing plan, executing a campaign, it is always Diane. She is absolutely extraordinary. She's visionary and a joy to work with, and always has the best and funkiest glasses.
Thank you so much.
I
That
do, I do,
endorsement.
however, need to say I've stepped down from the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee. I think I served for about nearly not quite maybe 10 years. I think I served on that board for 10 years, so I've stepped down, and I also stepped down from the Salesforce Web3 board. But I am now the chair of GFAN's Caribbean Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero. So
Yes.
ebbs and flows in terms of managing the workload.
Do you aspire to an uncomplicated and fulfilling way of life? I'm Dianne Squires, aka Dianne. That's what all my friends call me. I'm an island woman living on the island of Barbados and walking my path to a big and simple life. Walk with me and learn with me. Welcome to the Island Woman podcast.
Yes. I mean, obviously, there's a lot that you balance, but I really love to start the podcast with a bit of an icebreaker. So I do variations on this question. This is the one for you.
All
If you
right.
had to create a survival kit for a Caribbean woman CEO and you could only pack 3 items, what would you pack? And then we can go into order of priority. So a survival kit for a Caribbean woman CEO. 3 items in order of priority.
Woo! So boy, if I had to pack 3 things in a survival kit, so are we assuming that my phone is separate or
And you get three
okay,
alone.
all right. So my phone would be the first thing that has everything in it. So I have the my network, the people who I can call, details, any thoughts and ideas that I have, my workout schedule, my calendar, all of those things in the phone, which is the first thing. The second thing that I would pack, believe it or not, is Atomic Habits. It's not my favorite book, but I think it's probably the most practical guide to surviving and changing your life. One, I love to read, but two, I feel like Atomic Habits can almost help you to navigate anything because it tells you about how does your brain build information to be able to function differently. And what would be the third thing? Honestly, like a huge bottle of water.
That's handy for the Caribbean. I mean, we have to deal with the heat. We need to stay hydrated. It's, yeah, I agree with that one. So a bottle of water. And I like the fact, I know that a lot of people reference James Clear's work in Atomic Habits. So this is one that if you are a listener and you are also a leader, I've heard tons of leaders reference it. I think you need to get that on your shelf for this
Yeah, for
season. Yeah.
sure, for sure. And
Yeah.
it's the kind of book that I think it makes. So the first time you go through it, there may be 2 or 3 things that you can implement immediately. But if you, and I'm not a person who reads a book over and over again. I will watch a movie over and over again, but I will not read a book over and over again. And that is a book that I feel I will read again and again because each time there's a new tweak that I can make that completely changes the trajectory of my life.
think the other thing that people always reference is some kind of connection or a contact book or something like that because your network is so important. But what you added was that that has your workout schedule. And of course, we love to talk about well-being here. You have a lot of interests, and among all those other accolades that I listed, one of your interests that I'm, of course, in love with is your podcast, Getting to the Top. And I think you started that since 2022 and have done over 85 episodes.
Yep.
So I'm playing catch up, but I'm going to catch you. I'm going to catch you.
No worries. I love it. The race is on.
But what I noticed from the podcast, Racquel, is of those over 85 episodes, every single one features a woman. Every one. So my question on this, why women and why this message getting to the top?
Oh, and it's so funny. I have goosebumps, huh? Because I never say that it is a podcast of women or a women's podcast, but it is just conversations with transformational leaders on their about their journey to the C-suite or to the top of their organizations. And I think it is so important because when people talk about gender equality, they think about it as though it is something that is fair for women, and that's the reason that we should do it. And I think that that is a valid point as to why we should focus on gender equality, but that's not my purpose. All of the data points to the fact that when you have more empowered women, more women in leadership, more diverse leadership teams, you have better outcomes. It is no longer an opinion, it is a statement of fact. When you have more diverse boards, when you have more diverse organizations, and you see a lot of times or an organization gets into trouble and it doesn't even have to be a Me Too moment. Then they run out and find the women. And this podcast for me started from a conversation that I had the last event I attended going into COVID. And it was a Women's Day, International Women's Day event. And we were talking about the fact that, you're not seeing the gender equity on boards. And a few of the women at my table serve on boards. And they say, it's always, oh, we don't know any women. And one of the women, she serves on many different boards. She's amazing. And I'm still trying to tie her down to a date for our podcast, believe it or not, since 2020.
Mm-hmm.
But she said, anytime they come to me with that, I have a list of women that I know that I say, you can ask this one, this one, this one, this one. And I said, same for me. I always say, you're not going to ask a man for a list of women and find it. You have to ask other women in a similar position, and she will know her peers. So we started compiling a list of women that we thought would be excellent to serve on boards. And then we were thinking we'd have this list, and when anybody asked, we'd say, here's a list of women who would be excellent candidates for your board. And we did start to do that. And then I just started to think, you know what? Let me interview these women. Let me
Yeah.
interview these women and have a conversation, learn about how they became these exceptional transformational leaders. And so tell their stories so that other women can see. It is not because they didn't make any mistakes. It is not because they had a perfect plan. Many of them had to be dragged into leadership because they didn't see it in themselves. But it's so important to get these stories out, to make these women more visible so that others will follow suit.
And getting to the top, why did you settle on that title?
Because I wanted more women to be ambitious about their careers. They talk a lot about the glass ceiling, which is absolutely real, but there's also the sticky floor. A lot of women, when you look at percentages of women in organizations, you see a lot of women at the bottom. You also see a lot of women in the middle as managers, and then at the top suddenly there's this absence. So I want women to get off of that sticky floor and realize there are other levels that they must travel. And those who are able to get to the top, I want them to aspire to that leadership because it's the first thing you have to want it. And then once you want it, to help share some of the strategies for getting there.
Yeah, and on that last point about you need to want it. You mentioned that some of those ladies were dragged a little bit kicking and
Many, many,
screaming.
many.
But did you make an intentional decision? Was there a point where you said, I'm going for it?
You know that that meme, well, boys do it. And then I thought, yeah, well, boys do it. And so seriously, I think as I as I continued through my career, I had some really, really great leaders, mostly men, but some women. But there wasn't ever a point at which I thought, my gosh, this person is so exceptionally off the charts. This is not something that I could do. And I said, why do we hold the requirements for these positions in in such an unattainable position? Because many of these people were human, flawed, wonderful, smart, but I also had leaders who were not. And I won't say not which ones, but that I just said, why couldn't I see myself getting to that place? And then it was just like a light bulb. That's what I'll do.
I think that makes so much sense. But you certainly have to make a lot of decisions besides having that light bulb moment. So, what would you say are some of those key, I don't know, top three decisions you've had to make to get to the top? After making the decision, look, why not me? I can do this too. What are the key decisions you then had to make?
So if there were sort of three key decisions that I could point to. The first one was my education. And I don't think that that's the only path. I think a lot of women allow the lack of education, forgive me, allow the lack of education to hold them back. And I don't think that that should be something. I got pregnant while I was in undergrad. And then I had to decide whether, I finished. No, actually, I had to decide to finish and then decide whether or not I would go on to grad school. And I tell this story all the time. The best advice I've ever been given was from my aunt, because I called her and I said, oh my gosh, this baby is so small. I just don't know. You know, she needs me so much now. And she said to me, she will always need you. But actually, now she needs you less than she will as she gets older, and she will need you to be present in a way that you are showing up as your best self. She said, but listen, the time will pass whether or not you do something with it. So you can finish the degree and then go on and do your master's, and that 3 years will pass whether or not you do it.
Yes.
Make sure that you have something to show for it. And that hit me like a ton of bricks, and I pushed through. It was a lot of sacrifice, late nights, you know, really a lot of crying, I'll tell you that.
Yeah. I no,
Lot
I
of
can I
tears.
can well imagine. Yeah.
But I pushed through and I have never looked back. There's not a moment where I regretted that decision. So I think investing in yourself would be the number one decision. The second thing is taking really hard decisions. So in 1999, my grandmother, who raised me, got really ill. And I had delivered on my numbers for the year 6 months in. It just happened to be year 2000 conversion. So it was like shooting fish in a barrel, one, but also I was quite good at my job.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
met my numbers midway through the year. And so they said, do you mind doing some project management while we catch up? Because we can't implement everything that you've sold. And I said, of course. And I enjoyed it. And I was learning a lot as well. I taught classes, everything. Amazing. Then my grandmother got ill, and the woman who had never asked me not for a sweetie in my life said to my mother, ask her to come home. And I said, listen, I've got to go home. So
Yeah,
now
got
I've
to.
delivered my numbers. I have the vacation. And they said, we can't afford for you to leave now. And I said, I'm not asking you. I am letting you know that I'm leaving. She's asked for me to come and I will go. And they said, well, if you leave, you won't have a job.
And which company was this?
This was a company called Gaia in Atlanta. This was back in 1999. And I said, you know what? Okay. Okay. And that was a really, really, really hard decision for me to take because I loved the job. I was making good money. I did not want to lose my job. But the one person who had sacrificed everything for me asked me for the first thing ever. I was
Yes.
not going to let her down. I got home. She looked completely fine. I argued with my mother. I was like, why did you make me leave my job? And she died 4 days later.
She was waiting for you.
She was waiting for me. And I wasn't the only one she asked to come home, but I was the only one who came home. And everybody else lives in that regret of that decision to this day. And so there are times where you're going to have to make really hard decisions. Make sure it is a decision that you can live with. Because the things like jobs will come and go, your family will not. And the last thing is build a village. As much as I am so proud of my first daughter, it took a village. When I had to travel, my mother would fly in, and I'm completely grateful to her for that. But I also had dear friends who, if I was late in a board meeting, would then pick her up from school. And then, it was the housekeeper that I had, it was the nanny, it was, all of the things that you have to build in, but also making sure, back to that second thing, is that you are present enough and spending that time to ensure that when you look back on your life, that is not a regret. And I'll tell you today, my first daughter and I are best of friends. We talk every day. We have a incredibly, my husband says, too close relationship. But I don't regret, and I made many mistakes in motherhood, but I don't regret how we were able to craft, both with the village and the decisions, a really tight-knit family unit.
I feel some alignment there because I remember when my son was 2 turning 3, so very young, and I had just wrapped up a 10-year career in dance, which I was just like, "I cannot support me and a child on this. This is not gonna work." And I decided, let me do my master's degree and try to make that inroads into business.
Yeah.
And so I got in, I got approved for the master's, and then the decision was, can I take him? And I tried everything. I had a short window of time. It couldn't happen. I had to leave him with my family behind, and that tore me up inside. But what happened as well is I worked so hard, so extra hard, and I got a distinction in my master's. But that was a rough, rough year. And I understand making those hard decisions for the future that you need to build for yourself and for your family.
Yeah. And you're going to
Yeah.
have to make some sacrifices. I love that. I didn't even know you were a
No.
dancer.
You
But
did. I think I
listen,
told you so at some point. Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, like, being someone who has danced versus having, like, being a
Doing the
dancer.
thing. Yeah.
But it totally shows in your elegance. I get it. I totally get it.
Yeah. So invest in yourself, make the hard decisions, and build a village. And so I would definitely endorse those. And I'm sure those people who are listening can probably think of many decisions they've had to make that have been hard as well, and why the village is so important for them. But I want to turn now to some of the huge things that you're doing, because a trip to the CCSA website says the organization is a living lab, pioneering new sources of energy, new ways of doing business, new financing instruments and insurance products, etc. And then you're also this global ambassador for Race to Zero and Race to Resilience. Race to Zero aims to cut global human-caused greenhouse gas emissions in half by 2030. And then the Race to Resilience campaign wants to impact 4 billion people to help them adapt to the climate risks that are not going away. So these are gargantuan goals, and you're on the front lines of that. But then when you bring it down to a personal level, what do you think is the most important work that you are doing right now?
So a lot of the work around Race to Resilience, to Zero, and even CCSA's work is around advocacy. How do we speak to the people who are making the decisions to get them to invest in some of the new solutions? How do we get more entrepreneurs to the table designing new solutions? We've launched our innovation fund, which supports entrepreneurs in tools that they can use, that are self-service to help get their businesses to the point of operations. We have our project preparation, which helps them to then get from the point of you have an idea and a concept to getting that really fleshed out so that you can be investment ready. And then certainly providing tipping point grants so that people who have imminent access to funding but just need some additional component before they can access that additional funding, have an avenue to do that. We've also launched our Climate Smart Map, which lists, among many other things, demographic data, projects that investors and philanthropists can use to identify projects that they want to participate in, but also lists the sources of philanthropy that have come to the region between 2015 and 2021. And so it's really important that we understand where is the money coming from, what kind of money is available. The one thing that I thought would be the case when I got into this role is that there wouldn't be sufficient ambition in the Caribbean. What I've realized instead is that there is no end of ambition for our climate achievement or for our ability to play at the highest levels in terms of reducing our greenhouse gases or our plan to adapt to climate change. The problem is the money. And it isn't straightforward in terms of the money. We need far more philanthropy. If we're looking for investment, there are tons of investors who are interested in investing either in projects that have a return or in entrepreneurs who have great solutions.
Yes.
What we don't have is enough ready, shovel ready, not shovel worthy projects that have the ability to get to that stage of attracting that investment. And we need philanthropy to fill that gap.
And so do you see finding those sources of philanthropy as the most important work that you are doing right now?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And connecting projects with sources of philanthropy and helping them to navigate how to access those sources of philanthropy in identifying all of the entrepreneurs who are working on climate solutions, whether or not they know it, and helping them to get connected with those sources of funding. We are collaborating on several initiatives, the regional platform with the Caribbean Development Bank and the GCF, the Green Climate Fund, to list projects that are investment ready. Also, the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, again, listing projects that are ready for investment and connecting those projects with money. So I think it's all about the most important work is telling the story and connecting the money.
Telling the story, connecting the money. I want to, Raquel, as we were talking before, in this season of the Island Woman podcast, I'm really looking at that scale of ambition that women have and where that is at right now. And also the scale of well-being. Those two things have to work together so that we are achieving what we can achieve in our regional and on the global stage, because we're not going to do it if we're unwell.
No.
But just looking back at that, telling the story and connecting the money, if you had to put your level of ambition for achieving this goal, and we put it on a scale, 0, not important at all, and 10, kind of the classic scale, this is my life mission. Where are
Mhm.
you now on that scale?
And the scale of achieving the objectives
Yes.
for
The
the
ambition
organization.
to achieve that.
Ambition to achieve that. 12. 12. Where am I actually landing? Maybe on a good day, 7.1. But where I aim to reach is far outside of what's possible. So yes, 12.
Yeah. I mean, you just talked about me and dance, and you didn't know about that, but I know that you're an avid, like, you work out. I've always known this because you let it be known. People knew when you were going to work out. You posted this on social media along with the things that you're doing as a leader. But let's also put that sense of well-being on the scale, because I know this is difficult. If we think of the sense of well-being that you're at right now,
Hmm.
doing all these things that you're doing, where 0 is, I'm constantly stressed. So a 10 where I feel perfectly balanced. Where are you now on that scale?
So in terms of, I love that question, by the way. In terms of the things that I need to do that I am doing for my well-being. So I'm a 5-time marathoner. I am, I work out at a minimum 5 times a week. I try to eat right. That's the biggest hurdle is cutting out all of the sugar and eating properly and ensuring that my macros are good and my micros as well. In terms of doing the things that I need to be doing right now in my life, I would say I'm at a 9.5. Am I seeing the results? No. Levels of stress, I think meditation and gratitude are huge in that in getting to that right place. So I'd say in terms of that level of stress, I am probably based on where I am against where I'd like to be. Again, maybe a good 8, aiming to reach for 10. I have put off my meditation practice every day for the last week, and I need to jump on that. I think it's really good. I can see the ability to focus, my ability to get work done. I also think it's really important to understand your rhythms. I used to be one of those people who would try to work late. So, I'm working on something and you know, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, and I'm still working on it. I'm not a night person. I am a morning person, a classic morning person. So it was almost a light switch for me that went off when I realized, okay, no matter what you're working on, go to bed at the 8:30, 9 o'clock that you go to bed, but you can wake up at 2 o'clock. And my brain is so much sharper. I am so much faster doing an early morning than a late night. And so
Yeah.
understanding my own rhythm of when I do my best work to be able to get more done. But, I wish every day had 48 hours. I'm absolutely draconian about sleep. I've read so many books on sleep and read so many studies about sleep. Like I will sleep,
You're going to
but
sleep. Yeah.
I will sleep. And so I'm lucky in that I can sleep on a plane and I'm easy to, I have excellent sleep hygiene, but I definitely need more hours in a day to get all of the things done that need to get done.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people would be wondering, well, how is she doing it all? How am I not, a CEO and a global ambassador and I'm not at an 8 on my well-being scale, but she is. A lot of people would be wondering, but I think that thing of knowing your rhythm is essential, and a lot of people try to work against theirs, and maybe that's the big problem there. So people do talk about time management, but I like the idea better of knowing your rhythm.
But time management is really big for me as well, and I'm certainly not perfect, and I am a perfectionist, but I don't aspire to perfection here. But one of the things that happened early in my career, my first real job was as a paralegal, and as a paralegal, I had to bill for my time. So I had to bill for my time in 6-minute increments. And that has never left me. So I am able to track on a daily basis. So, which is why you always know when I'm working out because the team sees the first thing that I do in the morning is something for me, and it is me going to work out. And then it is me getting ready. And so every minute of my day is mapped out every single day. I know where the time is going. So when I am wasting time on social media. I don't watch TV. I'm not a TV person. I've watched a couple episodes of Scandal on my vacation, and I stayed up till 3 o'clock in the morning. I told my daughter, "This is this is witchcraft." Each time they leave me on a cliffhanger, I was like, "I will never watch that again." As much as I love the concept of it, like anything that interferes with my sleep or my ability to do the things that I've set out to do, off my
Yeah.
schedule. So just looking at and I have to make adjustments all the time. So I'll say, okay, I'm wasting time doing this, or I'm spending too much time doing this, or this is not working for me in the way it's not working with my rhythm. Then I have to change it and I have to revise it and I have to be accountable to me for what I want.
Yeah, love that. So we have, of course, lots of women who are listening to the podcast on podcast channels, but we're also on YouTube. And to start wrapping this up, I always ask if you were in a room with aspiring leaders, no matter their age or stage, but Caribbean women specifically. It could be a room of one, it could be a room of 20 or 100. What is the best advice you're going to give to them?
Best advice I would give to them is why not you? Why not you? There are so many things that we automatically exclude ourselves from unnecessarily. Somebody's going to do it. Somebody's going to be the first. Somebody's going to be the CEO. Somebody's going to be the director. Why not you? And there are so many things that we think, feel, want, and we say it to other people and they laugh or they think it's ridiculous. That hone in on that. That is the thing that you need to do. Not that, once you have an idea in your mind about something that you could do and somebody else thinks it's ridiculous, that is exactly the thing that you should pursue, because people will not see the vision that you have for your life. And I just listened to one of my favorite podcasts, Diary of a CEO,
Yeah.
with Stephen Bartlett, and he interviewed
Yeah.
Kevin Hart.
Yeah.
And Kevin Hart was talking about when he told his friends that he was going to be a comedian. They're like, "You're funny, but you're not that funny." And he's like, "Yeah, but I want to do like Eddie Murphy." They're like, "You're not Eddie Murphy." And he realized in that moment, I will need to keep this to myself. But then he started to grind and just kept going. And don't worry about anybody else's timeline for what they're doing and how they're doing it. Timelines are fluid. Work on you against you and what you're capable of, and believe in the vision that you have for your life. And if it doesn't frighten you to tell it to other people, it's not big enough, grow bigger.
Mhm. I love that. Earlier you talked about investing in your education and the fact that some women think that lack of education is something that's going to prevent them from going into leadership positions. But we also know stories of women who have all the academic qualifications, all the technical qualifications, and they still feel some kind of trepidation about stepping into leadership positions.
Yeah.
And so it's good to hear you say just grow bigger, keep the ridiculous idea and
Yeah.
aim for that. Because I
And
think
work
a
at
lot
it.
of people just, think themselves ridiculous if they're having that thought.
Yeah.
So already you're shutting yourself down. And I want to thank you for those messages. Um, Invest in yourself, make hard decisions, build the village, believe in that ridiculous idea, hold on to it, and grow bigger.
Yeah.
And so the final thing, of course, is people will want to know more about Racquel Moses if they don't already know, and they'll want to know more about the work of the CCSA and everything else that you're doing. So give us a few of the channels that we can find you on, online, offline, wherever.
Sure. You can find me on Instagram as Rack Moses. You can find me on TikTok as Rack Moses as well. I think that's where I give probably most of my advice for women aspiring to leadership is on TikTok. I am also on LinkedIn, but I only connect on LinkedIn with people that I've actually met, because I think otherwise your LinkedIn is a free for all. So I definitely, but if we meet, I will add you on LinkedIn, and then we have a basis for a relationship. Because I get people all the time asking me on LinkedIn for a reference, and I was like, but I've never met you. And so how am I giving you a reference? Um, so that those would be the best ways. And if we have met, please connect with me on LinkedIn. That I love to connect with people that I actually do know on LinkedIn. And let me see where else. You can find me on YouTube. You can find Racquel Moses. You can also find me at racquelmoses.com. So you can find me anywhere. I think if you search for Racquel with a C and Moses, you will find me.
Yeah, absolutely. So there you
And
have it, people. Sorry,
and of
go
course
ahead, Racquel.
CCSA is caribbeanaccelerator.org.
It's been a pleasure to have you. I know that we're on a time constraint, which I've created for myself, but I like to give people a snippet of what my guests do, but also to give them curiosity to dig in more and find out more, because that's what we really need to be doing. And I hope for all you women out there that you have left feeling a little bit more motivated, more inspired, and maybe with more questions about how you too can lead, because you are capable of doing this. And we are the people who I think are going to elevate our Caribbean region to things that we can't even decide or see yet.
Yeah.
Us
Yeah.
women, we can do that. So, Racquel Moses, thank you so much for being my guest on the Island Woman podcast. It's been amazing to have you.
Thank you so much, Diane. It's been amazing, and I'm honored to be interviewed by you. So really, really glad that you asked, and I'm overjoyed.
Great. Thank you so much. All right, that's it for now. If you've made it to the end of this fabulous episode with me, thank you so much for taking the time. And if you liked it, share it with a friend, leave a comment, or do both. Also, give a review on any podcast platform that you subscribe to. If you watched this on YouTube, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel, it's free. Remember to click the bell icon to get notified every time a new episode goes live. This has been episode 8, Season 3 of the Island Woman podcast. I'm your Island Woman, Dianne Squires, aka Dianne. Until next time.